There's a saying in the NYPD, if you don't want to do something, run it through the legal division. Because everything causes liability. No, can't do that.
You get arrested for killing 5 people. That new law said you got out in 90 days. You shall not be denied pretrial release after 90 days. No exceptions. Now, I can't get a quintuple homicide ready for trial in 90 days. No way.
How can a guy with 6 warrants be on the street? Because our warrant division would have been after him. And I said it, sitting right here, that the easiest way to reduce crime is arrest people who are wanted now before they commit another crime.
Well, the sanctity of human life is at the heart of everything we do, and we're losing that. The rights of the defendant are trumping the rights of the victims.
Welcome, everybody, to another session of Wearing the Badge. Tonight is, well, first of all, it's always fun for me. But tonight, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Safety Act here in Illinois. And as you know, we've had a couple of police chiefs, we've had a couple of legislators come on and talk about it, how it was formed. And now, at the other end of the system, we've got Jim Glasgow here, who I got to tell you something. He's the, first of all, he's a great guy. So glad that we met. We met on a panel a couple of years ago, and we stayed in touch a little bit over the years. And I looked him up coming onto the show, and I didn't realize just how many things we had in common besides magnificent mustaches. But we also, well, first of all, you graduated law school in 1981.
Yes.
Which is when I became a New York City police officer. That's when my career in law enforcement started. We're dog people, right?
Yeah.
You got 5 dogs, 5 children.
I got 4 dogs, 5 children.
Okay. I read 5 and 5, which really harkened me back to my childhood because I was the youngest of 3 boys living in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, and every time one of us would move out, they'd get another dog. So there were 3 Siberian Huskies at one time.
Wow.
And in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. And I trained and showed the oldest one, and then my brother Jimmy took it over as we moved on. But yeah, dog people. My parents used to cook for the dogs, not for us. They used to make this stew and put it over Yukonuba and stuff. And I'll be okay. Just a little bit of therapy, everything will pass. But we also went to Catholic school. I went to St. Raymond's Grammar School in the Bronx in Cardinal Spellman. And the day I graduated Cardinal Spellman was the last time I shaved my upper lip because we weren't allowed to have mustaches.
Yes.
Obviously, back then. But Jim, it's a real pleasure to have you here. And let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk, fill in some blanks on your background. You've got more awards than, General Patton had back in the day when I took a look at it. And just 8, this is your 8th
4-year term, yeah.
4-year term. 92? You started as the...
yeah.
As
I was an assistant in 81, an assistant state's attorney.
So you've been in that same office the whole
Well, I went into private practice for a period of time.
Right.
But
I did the same thing. But mine wasn't by choice. That was different. So anyway, fill in some blanks. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, again, like we said, my professional career, basically, in my 20s, I was trying to find myself. So I didn't really accomplish a whole lot, but I finally went to law school, and I always wanted to be a prosecutor. And, it's a very selfless job, but you could help a lot of people. And I've been able to balance, the compassionate side of the job along with the law enforcement side, I think, pretty well. And, I've always believed that there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Sure.
Like I told you, I was born in an orphanage on LaSalle Street here in Chicago. And my mother was an Irish immigrant. And, but she lied about how tall my dad was. She was trying to protect him, right? He was 6'2". So she said 5'6". That's the only reason I'm sitting here, because I got 5'6" Jim Glasgow from Joliet because of the height. And it turned out, I couldn't have gotten better parents. And that's why I feel when I see kids that don't have good families, I realize what I have.
Right.
And when we moved to Joliet, I spent my summers at the Joliet Country Club. So I wind up being born, an orphan, and get adopted by these wonderful parents who were great role models, took care of all my needs. I never wanted for anything. And my mother, God, she'd brag about me. And I said, Mom, that didn't really happen. What are you saying? So it's, one of those deals. You couldn't pick better parents. I've done a lot of work in Joliet with, I used forfeiture money to buy transport vans for the at-risk youth agencies. And that's a game changer for them because, they get them to educational opportunities, sporting opportunities that they wouldn't normally have a chance to get to. And when I first got elected, I started this organization to fund character education in the schools, in the public schools. And I call it Ceasefire. Character education activates self-esteem, fostering individuals respecting each other.
You must have had a great acronym unit because in the NYPD, we had a great acronym unit. And there were acronyms for everything, Operation Band. But my favorite one was called TOPAC, T-O-P-A-C. To this day, I don't know what it stands for. But in the precincts or the districts that we worked in, we said it stood for The Other Police Are Coming. So you stay right here. The other police are coming. Got to go. And that's how it kind of worked out. Now I have to go back and find out what it actually meant because I'm curious. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, we were just talking about the Safety Act. And when it first passed, it passed in a very unusual fashion. As we all know, 764 pages were delivered to the legislature, and over a 2-day period, they had to vote on it. And there would be no way to read all of that and understand it to effectively vote on it, but it happened.
Didn't we just see that in Washington, D.C. also?
Yeah, I can only imagine what those bills are like. They have to, it's physically impossible to read it all.
Oh, yeah.
But there were some glaring issues with the Safety Act right out of the box. And, it's not that we can't exist without bail because we're doing it. And my jail's only down 20% occupancy. So we're still pursuing all the cases that we need to pursue. We're winning all of our trials on the violent cases. So everything we've been able to adapt. And I'll throw in here, there was a trailer bill that helped us do that.
Yep.
But when
But you shouldn't put something together and then ask people who are the experts what they think about it.
Yeah, we weren't asked.
And that's disturbing.
Yes.
Because they didn't ask you, they didn't ask the police. It was pure politics.
But we kept asking to sit down at the table and fix some of the problems that were glaring.
Yeah.
And there was no response. We couldn't get anybody to sit down. And so I was given a talk on July 4th in Naperville at the park. And in the middle of the speech, I just thought, I better tell people what I know about this bill because we've got to get some public support backing us because they're not listening.
Yeah.
And so I laid out, the two most glaring things in the bill. And, if you get arrested for killing 5 people, that new law said you got out in 90 days. You shall not be denied pretrial release after 90 days. No exceptions. Now, I can't get a quintuple homicide ready for trial in 90 days. No way. Okay? So look at the Highland Park shooter.
Sure.
Look how long that dragged on.
Yeah.
If that case got called in 90 days, it would have been absolutely impossible.
So it's like the guy in Idaho, right? That just pled guilty yesterday. Yeah. Idaho, not Idaho State, University of Idaho killed the 4 kids.
Right. But here's the kicker. So the quintuple murderer gets out, and then he doesn't show up for the next court date. They took away the judge's authority to give me a warrant to go get him. He's out. Now, they threw in a ridiculous thing that you could do a rule to show cause. We can't get a police officer serving a rule to show cause on a quintuple homicide. That'd be suicide. So there was no way to get this person back into the system. If a police officer drove by and saw him, he couldn't do anything. There'd be no arrest warrant. Now, that was lunacy, obviously. So,
yeah.
We pressed on and we continued to try to negotiate. And I commissioned my staff to start writing a lawsuit because we had to stop this. And as we progressed, we were able to get a trailer bill because with the threat of the lawsuit coming, they sat down with some of the state's attorneys, and we knew what the nuts were that we needed to change, and we got that done. One of them was the 90 days. We got rid of that, and it's back onto the speedy trial that we've always had, historically, where I can manage my cases and have enough time to try them. But again, it was only through the threat of that lawsuit that we got them to sit down and finally rationally negotiate. So we're with the trailer bill that we did get, it made enough modifications that all of the prosecutors are able to do their jobs.
Well, that's great.
It's a little more difficult, and we've got some additional hurdles to get over, but it's working. And the jails didn't empty because, but when we were first talking about it, that was a possibility. The legislation didn't say whether or not the people that were in custody could opt into this new law, demand the 90 days, and walk out the door.
How can a guy with 6 warrants be on the street? Because our warrant division would have been after him. And I said it, sitting right here, that the easiest way to reduce crime is arrest people who are wanted now before they commit another crime.
I mean, the bravery that the police officers show, like you said, when you walk up to a car that's completely blacked out, you have no idea what you're going to encounter. And yet officers do that every single day.
Well, the one that I'm going to keep talking about is the fact that it repealed, or I should say modified, felony murder. And again, I already talked about this. I'm going to talk about it again and again and again until somebody fixes it. And felony murder has it that if you're in the process of committing a felony and somebody gets killed, whether it's a stolen car and you run over a family on Michigan Avenue, or if you're doing a robbery and your partner shoots the guy, you're accountable for that murder at the same time if you're committing that robbery.
Yes.
And with the case of Crystal Rivera, police officer Crystal Rivera, who just unfortunately died recently, single mom with a 10-year-old daughter. Her and a partner chase a guy into a building. They enter an apartment. Guy pulls a gun out. Separate guy pulls a gun out. Partner shoots, ends up hitting her and killing her. That is almost word for word drawing a direct line for felony murder. Mm-hmm. That doesn't exist today. So in 2 years, I want somebody to explain to Crystal Rivera's daughter why mommy isn't here anymore, but this piece of garbage is back on the street if he stays in for that long.
Right.
The guy had 6 warrants, which, by the way, in my world of running crime strategy for police departments, my question is, how can a guy with 6 warrants be on the street? Because our warrant division would have been after him. And I said it, sitting right here, that the easiest way to reduce crime is arrest people who are wanted now before they commit another crime. Seems pretty logical, right?
Right.
And here's a case where if that warrant was enforced, who knows if she would have been alive today. Anything could have happened. But that has to be corrected.
Well, the sanctity of human life is at the heart of everything we do, and we're losing that. The rights of the defendant are trumping the rights of the victims.
Well,
and I'm hoping that's a tide that's going to turn the other way. I've got a piece of legislation that was proposed in January of 2024 on the heels of the dust-up we had with the Safety Act. And one of the authors of the Safety Act got a bill number and filed this bill. And it basically says, it defined prohibited traffic stops for police officers. And the first one is failing to display registration plates or stickers. License plate readers are the heart and soul of our investigative tools today in catching offenders.
That's kind of like ShotSpotter. Yep. Oh, wait, we got rid of that too. I'm sorry.
Expired registration sticker. Can't stop.
Then what's the use of having them? What's the use of registering a car?
Well, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous, but
It's
it got
and
filed,
insurance.
it got a bill number, and went up for first reading. This is the one that I really can't even wrap my head around. You can't stop a car until it's 26 miles over the speed limit. Well, what's the purpose of the speed limit if it's now enhanced by 26 miles an hour? So you're in a school zone at 15 miles an hour, and you're ripping through there at 40 miles an hour, and you can't be stopped. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. It's got improper lane usage and excessive tint, tinted windows. Again, that's a legitimate basis to stop a car. If you can't, the Illinois statute defines the light transmission required on the windows and where they're located. And our officers have tint meters.
Yeah.
So they're not just doing it, shooting from the hip.
One of the most terrifying things in the world is stopping a car and not being able to see into it.
Correct. And I asked my local department, because I gave the tint meters to the department, and they were using them, and they were working very well. And then they were able to testify in court. The judge didn't have to take their word for it because they had scientifically measured the light transmission. It's not just they're eyeballing it.
Yeah.
Okay. And, this is something that is absolutely critical for law enforcement. And I asked the chief, I said, you do have a backup car when these guys are stopping this, don't you? And he said, no. And I said, Chief, you're asking for a disaster when that happens, because the people inside have the drop on the officer.
Yeah.
If there's a second car, they're going to think twice before they do something. So we're working on that. But it's just, the bravery that the police officers show, like you said, when you walk up to a car that's completely blacked out, you have no idea what you're going to encounter. And yet officers do that every single day. But this law, obviously, thankfully, law enforcement rose up statewide, on the heels of the Safety Act, and this thing went away. But just the fact that it was proposed shows you a philosophy that underlies the Safety Act.
And I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Well, it's certainly not in the public's best interest.
No. And the rights of the accused is obviously important, right? Better that 100 innocent men, 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man goes to jail, right?
Right.
Something like that. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't get that far. But at the end of the day, our job is to protect the public, and the entire system has to work in sync to make that happen. And I just don't understand what's going on. And listen, you're a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. What is this? What is a democratic socialist? Isn't democracy and socialism like completely different things? But apparently,
moron.
There's moron in there somewhere. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
But this guy just won the Democratic nod in New York City.
Well, I now lead a murder case in Joliet. The defendant was Kevin Fox. It was a nationwide story. His little daughter was killed. And the defense attorney brought me evidence showing that he was excluded from the DNA that was obtained for a private area. Absolutely excluded with a YRSTR test. And that was brand new in 2004. And next day I was in court dismissing the case. And people were going, you can't, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is, this high profile case. I said, there's no doubt in my mind, I can't prove this case. And the moment I reach that decision, politically, I don't care what happens, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy, but I get endorphins from doing the right thing.
Well,
and again, when you have them pushing back saying you can't do this, and I had attorneys in the office that didn't want me to do it.
Yeah.
Because it was going to be a real risky thing to do. But I said, we are in a position right now where I have to tell the judge I can no longer prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. Nolly Price.
Well, two things. First of all, I spent 2 years as a captain in the Internal Affairs Division in the NYPD. Okay. And the way that happened was there was something called the Mullen Commission, which resulted in, it's actually a documentary. It's called The 7-5. And there was a guy named Michael Dowd who was on the front page of the Daily News as the dirtiest cop ever, and a picture of him. He might have done hits for drug dealers. He was snorting cocaine off of the hood of his car and so on and so forth. And this guy had had complaint after complaint after complaint, and they all fell through the cracks. And Ray Kelly was the first deputy, and he got charged with investigating the circumstances of that case. And he came up with a brilliant document about this thick that described the bifurcated system where nobody actually had ownership, and the investigations were less than good, let's put it that way. And Ben Ward was the police commissioner at the time, and Kelly sends it up to Ward. Ward retires. So Ray Kelly gets into the police commissioner's office as police commissioner, takes his document and says, hey, this is brilliant. I'm going to do this. And what they did was they flushed internal affairs, and they brought in street cops. And I was one of the guys who went in there. And I got to tell you something. You talk about doing the right thing. It was a very distasteful thing for a lot of the things that I had to do. You know, I had a female officer who alleged that another cop had raped her on a ski trip. Well, it turns out it wasn't a rape because her roommate was in the room trying to, mind her own business while they were consensually having sex the whole weekend. And we had to go and fire her. She made a false report against another police officer. Beautiful young lady, just stupidity. But I also did the right thing on a number of occasions where good cops made mistakes of the heart that could go either way. And I was very proud that there was one famous lawyer named Alton Maddox in New York City, one of the civil rights guys, always in front of the TV screaming about, the cops. And he calls in a complaint that the cops beat a guy to death and left him in an alleyway to die. Well, I happened to be the captain working at the time, and lo and behold, I go and do the investigation. And I walk into the detective squad, and everybody stiffens up, and, internal affairs is here, and blah, 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 blah. Well, I helped them do the investigation, and we were able to absolutely prove that the guy was a burglar, and he was crawling along a fence, and one of the slats broke, and he fell and hit his head, and that's how the guy ended up dying. So there's a case where all of a sudden the bad guy becomes a good guy because you do the right thing, you make the right decision. And I'm very proud of that. But that was an opportunity that I had. But the other thing that I wanted to say is you said some lawyers in your office didn't want you to do that. And the joke in the NYPD, I'm sorry to keep referring back to the NYPD, that's where I spend the most of my time. There's a saying in the NYPD, if you don't want to do something, run it through the legal division. Because everything causes liability. No, can't do that. And when I came up with a crime strategy to take out narcotics locations, not just lock up narcotics dealers, right? Take out narcotics locations, stop the supply from being there, which stops the demand from going there to get it.
Yes.
Right? We never do that. And then on top of it, bring in city resources to clean up the area and form the community around it where it didn't exist before. Now, to do this, we may have kind of declared martial law on the block. And when the powers that be heard about me doing this, because I was precinct commander at the time, I had to give a presentation to the police commissioner. And I'll never forget Howard Safir was the police commissioner. And he turned to George Grasso, who was the deputy commissioner for legal matters. And he said, George, get me a yes attorney for this one. And lo and behold, we went out and they made guidelines that made it so that we were just doing our job and protecting the civilians because it was a drive-up location. So we decided that, we'd just do car stops at both ends of the block all the time. And, because it's licensed, and as long as you make a decision that you're stopping every car, you can do it. Yeah. If you're stopping every blue car, you could do it. If you're stopping every red car, and that's the way that it worked out. But, it's so easy to say no, and it's so hard to have I'll call it moxie, to say yes and do the things like you're talking about. Do you tell a doctor how to operate? Right? Yeah. Do you tell a plumber which pipes to cut? Or the electrician, which wires to connect? No, but nobody asks prosecutors and police, judges maybe even. I've experienced that in my career, and my greatest mentor was a guy named Pat Hornett, and he always told me, and he knew me pretty well. I was the sergeant who worked for him, and he said, "Gary, if you think that you have something to say that people need to hear, don't be afraid. You tell them." And the interesting thing was, as a young sergeant, I'm looking at all these old white-haired captains and above and chiefs, and I'm like, I can't tell these guys that. And when I made captain, that's the last civil service test of the NYPD, I got a peek behind the curtain, and I was like, these guys aren't that good. I could tell them what I think. And that's how I ended up a couple of years later running New York's crime strategy for 7 years. So
that's awesome. I just wanted to mention on that Kevin Fox case, 6 years later, working with the FBI, we found the real killer.
The right guy.
Yeah.
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 You see it?
Yeah. And there was one other case, a guy named Garry McCarthy.
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry.
Related. Probably related.
Yeah. Anyway, I nollied his murder case also that I had charged. His defense attorney didn't bring me anything to cause that, but as I was putting the case together, I brought in a blood expert who blew up my case. And so I dismissed it. 6 years later, we caught the real killer. Now, it's just an anomaly that both of those were 6 years later, but in both of those cases, the dismissal was the right thing to do. And, there was pushback, but, it's
okay.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, by the way, I locked up a McCarthy too. A Rastafarian named Tyrone McCarthy, believe it or not.
There you go.
And while I'm processing him, he looks at my name tag and he says, "Oh, Babylon, man, we have the same name." I said, "Yeah, but you're the black sheep of the family." He says, "Why you lock me up?" I said, "This woman says that you raped her." And he says, "Rape?" He got very indignant. He says, "I don't do no rape. I'm a stick-up kid." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It turns out we got a conviction on it, and this before DNA. She saw, it was a stranger rape. She saw him on the street, and he had a protruding scar on his neck that she recognized, picked him out of a lineup, and we got a conviction on it. Awesome. So, see, McCarthy's can do bad things too.
There you go.
So tell us about some other things, some other good things that you do besides, fighting legislation when it's already been decided on is a very difficult thing to do. And that's what really leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth on this. And I use this example. Do you tell a doctor how to operate? Right? Yeah. You tell a plumber which pipes to cut or the electrician which wires to connect? No, but nobody asks prosecutors and police, judges maybe even.
Right.
What should we do about these things? They put it together, give it to you, and then somebody's got to fix the felony murder statute. That's got to happen. And if this is not the example, I don't know what is.
Right. Oh, I agree with you. And, I've always written a number of pieces of legislation in my career, and usually as a result of something that happened locally.
Always.
And I had a case where somebody set a cat on fire. And back in 1999, there was a Class B misdemeanor in Illinois, which is nothing.
Right.
And I thought, wow, any human that would be that cruel is very dangerous. And I did a little research, and the FBI's got statistics showing that, these mass murderers confessed to abusing animals when they were young.
Right.
And they worked their way up. So I wrote the animal torture bill for Illinois, and it was made a Class 4 felony, the first felony ever for the abuse of an animal in Illinois back in 1999. It's now a Class 3 felony. But I was very proud of that bill because the abuse of animals is a precursor to violence against humans.
Of course.
And
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing.
I started this Pause for Kids program where I had therapy dogs for our Children's Advocacy Center. That's where we interview sexually abused children. And these dogs come in, to calm them before and during their interviews. And that program has been very successful. And now we have a lot of comfort dogs in my office, actually in my office during the workday. They don't interfere with work at all. In fact, they make everybody more productive. It's
in many cases, dogs are much better human beings than human beings.
well, yeah. I also started this thing called the League of Extraordinary Canines, and I've placed 27 police canines on the street in Will County.
Wow.
And that's been fantastic. I was shocked when I started looking at the different small towns, and they no longer had a canine unit. And I convinced them that they needed one, not just for the public safety, but just the camaraderie and the image of the police department in the public's eyes.
Did you get any bloodhounds?
There is one bloodhound in the mix. I think the sheriff has one, but I didn't provide that.
Because I've never seen a tracking dog succeed. And I've been at a number of scenes when we were looking to do it. And I think because you can't put a round peg in a square hole,
Yeah.
you can't expect German Shepherds to do everything,
Right.
right? And I think it's bloodhounds that you have to get to do that stuff.
Well, one of the dogs one of the initial dogs got called out to another county where they didn't have a dog in the entire county. And so they had the murderer in custody, but he was on a farm before they arrested him, and they couldn't find the murder weapon. So the dog that I got went out there with his handler. He got a scent off the guy and went into the woods, and in 5 minutes found where he hid the gun.
Wow.
And that nutted that murder prosecution.
Wow.
So right out of the box, that dog paid for itself.
Cool.
So, but again, the image that the department has changes. You know, at the Summerfest, you have your police dog there. Everybody wants to pet the dog, play with the dog. It's a psychological thing that I think departments need to recognize and really take advantage of.
You also have to be careful of the history of like Birmingham with German Shepherds and,
Yeah, well, they're not all German Shepherds.
No, I know that.
You know,
I know that.
There's a variety of breeds.
Yeah.
You're surprised. And the very first dog that I bought literally saved a police officer's life. 2:00 in the morning in a dark corner of the municipality, he sees a guy, turns out to be a drug dealer from Chicago, and he winds up making an arrest for the drugs and gun. And the guy was giving him trouble, but the dog went nuts. He was in his lockup, but he went nuts, and the guy backed off. And ironically, when he made his confession, he added the fact that he was going to kill the officer until the dog went nuts.
Oh boy.
I'm like, okay, well, thanks for that validation.
Yeah. Sounds
What he didn't know is that none of the dogs that I provided are bite dogs.
right.
But he was from Chicago, and they have a lot of bite dogs in Chicago, so he assumed that.
All right. Now I got to tell you one of my dog stories. So Tanya was the oldest dog, and we obedience trained her. And she scored in the very first show 199.5 out of a possible 200.
Wow.
And I trained her not to step off the curb because we lived in the Bronx for obvious reasons, right? So the short story is she was like a computer. And I'm graduating college from Albany State, and I've got 4 roommates. We rented a house. And all the parents come up. We have a nice barbecue in the backyard. Naturally, my parents come up with 3 huskies in the back of the car. Okay? So barbecue is over. It's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. All the parents leave. We're going out, right? So we go to a bar around the block. And we're there for an hour or two. We come out, and one of my buddies goes, "Is that your dog, Garry?" And I'm like, I look across the street. Tanya's sitting across the street. My parents didn't realize that they didn't get all 3 dogs. And she tracked me to the bar, but wouldn't step off the curb. Now, this is before cell phones.
Yeah.
So I get Tanya, I take her back to my apartment, and I call my parents, and my mom was hysterical. "Oh, Tanya." I said, "Don't worry, I've got Tanya here." Well, Tanya hung out with us for a couple of days, and she found a penchant for licking the top of beer cans. And I think she was drunk for like a couple of weeks after I finally sent her home to my parents. I didn't get in trouble for that one because I saved the dog, but teaching her not to step off the curb obviously helped, right?
Yes.
Back to the Safety Act. the thing that is also included in there is every year they increase the amount of training that we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Training is very expensive. But if you ask anybody at the state, they say, no, the training's free. You're right. The training is free. You provide it to us.
Yes.
However, when I take that officer out of a car and
Yes.
send him to training, I have to fill that car with somebody on time and a half.
Yes.
So we now are tracking our cost of training through those overtime tours. And it turns out in a sleepy little place like Willow Springs, it's costing me north of $3,500 in the first quarter of the year to get everybody trained up just to meet the standards to hold on to your certification. Now, take a city like Chicago, where you've got up to 13,000 if they're fully staffed, but they're definitely above 10,000. And do the math on that one.
Yeah.
And think about that cost. And you know what? They really need to work a little harder on the actual training. Sometimes the training is terrible, and some training is great. But there's different ways to do it now. Now AI is starting to step in to the training mode, which is great because you could have interactive type things with scenarios going on pretty much live that you're interacting, and you could stop it and talk about your car stop and so on and so forth. But the thing that I noticed when I saw one of these training videos for AI about a car stop, it was in the middle of a deserted road with a top down on a convertible, and I'm like, that's not Chicago. Chicago has the blacked out windows. You get high from pulling the car over because there's so much weed being smoked in it, and you can't see what's in it until they open the windows, and it looks like a Cheech and Chong movie from the 70s. So that's another thing that, bring us in. Let's talk about it. Don't keep shoving things down our throats.
Possession of under 5 grams of fentanyl is not detainable. Threatening a juror is not detainable. Threatening a public official is not detainable. That's I can't think of any 3 more ludicrous things that I could have uttered here on the show. Another thing about the Safety Act when it first came out, and this is one thing if you needed judge the act on fairness, they wrote the law so that an officer had to write his report without looking at his body cam. Now, I mean, if you want to destroy every criminal case, because no human being will ever have the retention of a videotape.
Right.
And so what defense attorneys would do is they would impeach the hell out of him because he didn't put this in there, didn't put that in there, or he might have been mistaken about something that if he could have looked at his body cam, he would have gotten it right. So we fought that really hard. And that was one of the things that they backed off of and allowed him to do. But the very fact that they said you can't, they were setting up every police officer on every arrest, on every police report.
Yeah. And that is obviously the goal of that particular endeavor, because, when I talk to people about this type of stuff and they're civilians, I ask them, have you ever been so afraid that you didn't realize you weren't breathing? And all of a sudden you take a breath and they're like, no. I said, then you shouldn't be talking about this because the mind does funny things in those situations. And my dad was a World War II Marine, and I had a much better understanding of him after I went through 9/11. And, I said it on this show, there's 2 20-minute periods where I really don't remember what happened.
Right.
Now, if I was involved in something during one of those 20-minute periods, how would I testify to that? Right?
Yep.
And if I had a body cam on and I reviewed it, then I would probably remember what had occurred. But, the mind protects you by blocking things out sometimes. And the other thing is when the adrenaline gets going, sometimes you probably can't even articulate some of the things that you see properly. So I'm glad that didn't go through.
Well, the other thing, too, about the Safety Act is there's still a number of offenses that should be detainable and are not. And you should be letting your local judges who know the lay of the land in the community decide whether this person is dangerous and needs to be incarcerated. And when you have a mandate that can't even be considered, you're basically tying the judge's hands. And so there's still a good number of offenses. I was mentioning to you, possession of under 5 grams of fentanyl is not detainable. Threatening a juror is not detainable. Threatening a public official is not detainable. That's I can't think of any 3 more ludicrous things that I could have uttered here on the show. You threaten the public official, then you got to tell him, hey, he's out.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, not that every person would be detained in every single circumstance, but give the judge the opportunity to hear the totality of the evidence and decide whether it's a safety issue.
And what's really funny about that is, or I should say ironic about that, is when I first came here, there was a state rep who introduced a bill for mandatory minimums for illegal gun possession. And I went down to Springfield and I testified on its behalf. And the argument that was made against mandatory minimums was tying the judge's hands. So now they're tying the judge's hands by saying you can't make a decision if John Smith is dangerous to the community.
Right.
So they're using the other side of the same argument that they used in the past for a different reason.
Right. Well, we lost our appeal with the Supreme Court, but 2 very knowledgeable justices dissented and agreed with us. And, as I sit here, we respect the court's opinion. That's the way the system works. And, but again, we weren't baseless in our lawsuit because 2 very learned judges agreed with us, especially on the 2014 amendment for victims' rights, where it basically says the victim could appear before a judge and request bail in an amount necessary to protect them and their family.
Right. That's good.
So,
well, so tell me this, because I've never been in the narcotics division. It's something in my career I didn't do. There's a lot of things I didn't do because there's just so many things to do. How many people would 5 grams of fentanyl kill?
I wish I'd looked that up before I came here, but
we'll get back to you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, two little grains of fentanyl the size of a grain of salt can kill you. And 5 grams, it would be an awful lot of people. And so the dangerousness of that dealer is astronomical.
Oh.
Or even that possessor.
So I mentioned to you that I lost a daughter to fentanyl. And it was a typical story. 3-sport athlete in high school, car accident, got her ankle crushed, loaded her up with
and I saw her picture. She was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's terrible.
Loaded her up with OxyContin and 18 years of addiction and countless rehabs and countless suffering with the family. But here's what I have to say about fentanyl today, and I'm going to keep saying it. And sorry if you keep hearing me say some of the same things over and over again, but this is important. Anybody who sells fentanyl in this environment has a 100% chance of killing somebody. And the sale of fentanyl and an overdose on fentanyl needs to be investigated as murder, not as just an overdose, which is how the police handle it, unfortunately.
Well, and when you look at the danger, you can't handle it. In other words, you can't touch it, you can't be around it, you can't inhale it. So the volatility is unlike any other drug.
Yeah.
And even a police officer making an arrest could die by coming in contact with the possessor or the dealer's fentanyl.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned threatening a public official. Tell us a little bit about your buddy who seems to be in the news again. He's kind of like herpes. He doesn't go away, does he? Drew Peterson.
Well, I mentioned the divine interventions that have kept me afloat.
Yeah. Because
I've been on the edge of the cliff more times than I can count. So I'm sitting in my office and one of my attorneys comes in.
Kind of exhilarating being on the edge of the cliff, though.
Oh, no, I love it.
Yeah.
It doesn't pay well, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And one of my attorneys comes in with a letter from Antonio Smith, and he was in prison with Drew Peterson. And we look at it, and he claims that Drew Peterson solicited him to murder me. And, you know, we get those kind of things all the time.
Okay.
Right? I mean, in this prosecutor's office, these inmates will write letters, oh, I know this, come and see me.
Oh, yeah.
It's all BS.
Yeah.
And so I've never had one pan out. But I said, I think we need to go talk to this guy and see. So we go talk to him, and he's a young man and very intelligent. Just did a stupid thing with his buddies, did a home invasion, somebody got hurt. He's doing 4 years.
Oh, boy.
Very articulate, very knowledgeable, and very believable. And he's willing to wear a wire, and he doesn't want anything. That never happens.
Right.
So we wind up getting him cycled back into the same prison with Drew Peterson, and he recreates all the conversations they had had previously. Usually that would be a warning to the bad guy. But he liked Antonio so much. He was so affable and friendly that he endeared himself again. In fact, during one of the tapes, Peterson's telling him how he trusts him more than anybody on the planet, and he's recording him for me. So you got to love that.
Yeah, but you might be making the case right now for his insanity plea. I hope he realized that, Jim.
Well, when the FBI brought the tapes to us, you know, and said, we're ready to go, one of the first things they played for me was Peterson bragging. He said, if I was out on the street, I'd take care of it myself. And I was going to do it back in 2007, but I couldn't shake the media and the police. So as soon as I heard that, I'm going, as an attorney, the entrapment defense is gone.
Right.
He's now admitted that he's been planning on killing me since 2007.
Wow.
And then, you know, the other admissions that he made were more than enough to convict. And Antonio Smith, the only thing we did do is move him to a federal facility to protect him.
Yeah.
He didn't get a day off his time. And I've never met him because I didn't want to have any influence, but I think it's time to go meet him. It's just shake his hand and thank him, because
What a story.
even though he did a terrible thing, he saved my life, probably.
I'm sure that there's something in his mind where, you know, anything that he's been involved in, he's looking to the next level for his own, I don't know, soul, if you will, something like that.
But the odds, you go around and talk to any prosecutor, and they'll say the odds of you having that happen, and then the guy doesn't even want anything, because that's usually the hard part.
Yeah.
They want
What are you
10
gonna
years off their sentence or something that we can't deliver.
Right.
And so.
Well, we've covered a lot of topics here tonight. We've still got a couple of minutes to talk.
Well, when Peterson, you know, I
Why don't you
I
talk
was
about
out,
the prosecution?
I was out of office for 4 years. I lost the election in 2000. The Chicago machine came down, spent $1 million in 4 years, knocking me out of office, but I won 4 years later.
Right.
When they got indicted in the hired truck scandal here in Chicago. And so I come back in, and I didn't know that Peterson's first wife had even died.
Right.
And the prior state's attorney did nothing with it, just sat on it. So 3 years later, when Stacy, his fourth wife, disappeared, we realized we had this file on Kathleen Savio, his third wife. I pulled the file, and I looked at the picture of her in this tiny little bathtub where she supposedly drowned. And I'm thinking, that's impossible. It's 22 inches wide, 44 inches long. If she slipped at one end, her foot would hit the front of the tub. She wouldn't even be submerged.
Right.
And then there were toiletries all around, nothing knocked down. No blood on the wall, nothing. And I said, this is, you know, this clearly is staged. And then I did some research about a concept called forfeiture by wrongdoing. That's where you can admit hearsay from a dead person, give it to a third party if the person kills you to make you unavailable for trial. So I had 3 women who said that Kathleen had told them, he told me he's going to kill me and make it look like an accident. Well, that's a pretty narrow type of murder,
Sure.
and that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And so we had to go through a lengthy hearing.
What year was that, Jim?
2007 is when Stacy Peterson disappeared.
Right.
It took 5 years to get the case to trial.
Right.
He went to trial in 2012 and was convicted.
Right. I remember being out here for the conviction, but I was trying to remember how far back the
Ironically, that's where I met Jeff Ruby, the gentleman I was telling you
Yeah.
about that has the lavish restaurants.
Yeah.
He had made a trip out to Joliet because he had a passion. He hated these domestic violence offenders, and he wanted to do something. He wanted to put out an award up or reward up or something. So he pulls into town with his giant bus, and he parked across from the courthouse, and he had to feed 5 meters. Well, that thing sat there all day. But he was a real character, and but if you ever want a good steak, he's your guy.
I like steak.
Yeah, no, his restaurants are second to none.
Yeah. Well, Jim, thank you so much for being here. Great career. Thank you for sharing some of your wisdom and behind the scenes with what's going on here in Illinois. But I am going to finish the same way I always do. There's nothing more noble. I'm going to say it this way because you're here, than being in law enforcement, rather than saying than being a police officer, because you can make a difference in the world. Every single day, you have an opportunity to make a difference in the world. And, you know, the fact that we can recognize that out of prosecuting, you're doing good, and out of doing internal investigations, I'm doing good also.
Right.
So it's great to see both sides of the coin. Thank you so much for your service.
I don't know if this will fit on the tape, but we just
Oh, don't worry.
No, we just
cut it
spent-
up any way we want.
we just spent 2.5 years. We had a sniper at a bank in Romeoville accidentally shoot an individual who was surrendering after taking a gun into a bank and shooting it and threatening people, and then he surrendered. And that was one of the most difficult things that me and my other attorneys had to do. 2.5 years struggling with whether or not this was a negligent act or a reckless act. Because if it's negligent, it's not criminal. If it's reckless in Illinois, it is criminal.
Sure.
And we were going back and forth and back and forth. And it 2.5 years of collecting evidence, talking to experts, we finally took the case to the grand jury, called 27 witnesses, and there was a no bill.
Mm.
But, we were going back and forth on whether, and we got to the point where we weren't 100% sure, and we wanted to make sure we literally let the grand jury decide. And the officer did not intentionally shoot that person.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he was there risking his life, as he always does. And so it meant a lot to us to make sure we got that right.
Yeah. Well, that's, a great example of that is the Adam Toledo case here in Chicago. That officer had
Oh, yes, absolutely.
less than 5/6 of a second
Yes.
to make the decision to shoot. And that man is suffering today. So that's why sometimes you hear a lot about officer wellness. I'm not buying it yet, because I've also seen the other thing where they throw them under the bus and then they back it up. And that's a case right there. That guy's suffering today. And he's a good guy.
Yes.
So, all right, that's a wrap. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Let's go eat.